Chief Pearson, welcome.
Thank you, and appreciate the opportunity to visit with you.
Well, I know that there was other captains and chiefs that were probably fighting over who's going to get to interview you, but I won that battle. I'm humbled because I served under you when I came on as a young ranger, and I've never forgot the conversations you and I had. We've had many of them, and I still feel like my career culminated because you helped me get there. And so I told my colleagues, I'll do the interview on this one. So I know you began your career in 1975 as a trooper. Tell us what it was like back then.
Well, I did start recruit school in October of 1975 and didn't graduate until, of course, that was an 18-week academy. Graduated in March. The academy is something that I think all DPS people will tell you. It's something that at the end of it, you feel great that you were able to graduate, and it's one of the hardest things that I'd ever done in life to go through that academy. And some of the things that happen to you during the academy, you think they're doing it to basically, for lack of a better term, be mean to you. But what they're doing is teaching you how to live, how to survive once you get out on the road. So that 18 weeks was 18 weeks well spent.
We've come a long way since 1975 with equipment and what you've seen evolve with the Highway Patrol, because we'll get into the part with the Texas Rangers a little bit later, but as far as what you've seen now from those days as a Highway Patrolman, now the equipment that they're using as a Highway Patrolman today.
Well, of course, when I started, I was in El Paso. At that time, we didn't have moving radars. We had a stationary radar, Stevenson radar, that you would hang out of the window, the back window, and normally a car would be past you before it would even register. A kind of funny story, but the New Mexico State Police had moving radars and had a partner at that time, Bob Collins, who had a real good friend that was a sergeant of the New Mexico State Police in Las Cruces. Well, Bob goes up, and talks to Sergeant Trappier and borrows a radar from him and comes back, and we're writing moving radar tickets. And so when the sergeant looks at the report, he's like, "How are y'all writing moving radar tickets?" And so after back and forth with the sergeant, we confessed that we were using equipment by the New Mexico State Police. So he told us to take the radar and give it back to him, which we did. Things like that made the job, even though it was a hard job, it made it real fun to do, because you could do at that time a lot of things that the troopers of today can't do.
So you went through your career as a highway patrolman, and as you're going along, what inspired you to become a Texas Ranger?
Well, I had, my goal really in DPS was to become a highway patrol captain. And that's what I was working toward, and made highway patrol sergeant and went to Brenham. Well, went to Houston first, and then I went to Brenham. And of course, Brian Taylor was a ranger in Brenham at that time, and I knew Brian as a trooper. I had him as a trooper, and then he got into the Rangers. We were talking, he was like, "Hey, you ought to try this." And over time, I decided, well, do I want to be a highway patrol lieutenant, or do I want to be a ranger? And I mean, you're at the fork of your career, yeah. You got to choose one.
Right.
And so I decided that I was going to try to become a ranger. And as luck would have it, I feel like I was able to become a ranger.
During that time period, as I understand, I've heard a story. I haven't heard the full story, but I want to ask you that you came across a ranger captain when you were a highway patrolman. Would you share that story with us?
I met Captain Banks, and it's just happenstance. And I never will forget. I mean, it was a Sunday afternoon. I'm out patrolling, and when I was in Abilene, you had a week of the interstate, and you had a week of farm to market roads, or other roads is what they were called at that time. And if you're we're assigned to the interstate. That's where you spent your time, your 8 hours, a 9 or 10, whatever it was. I was looking in the mirror and I see this vehicle coming up behind me and it's smoking. And so I look at it and it finally pulls over. Well, I turn and go back and pull up behind the vehicle, and there's 2 gentlemen in the vehicle, older, elderly. And so they get out and I get out of my car and tell them who I am and ask them if I can look under the hood to see why their vehicle was smoking, thinking it was a radiator hose. I tell them they're not that far from Tide, which is right outside of Abilene. And I said, let me follow y'all up to the station, and there's some guys there. I know the owner, and they'll help you get your vehicle repaired, and you can be on your way. I speak to the owner and tell him, these guys are having problems and they need some help. Instead of leaving them, I said, it's hot. And at that time, service stations was just, you walk in from the bay or from the outside, and you were in a little room with no air conditioning. And I said, let me just stay with y'all until they can repair your car. And they said, no, you don't have to. And I go, no, I want to. One of the gentlemen, he said, do you recognize me? And I go, sir, I'm sorry, but I don't. And he told me, he said, I'm a retired Ranger captain, Captain Banks from Dallas. And the guy in the back seat is the retired chief of the Garland Police Department. And so I again apologized to him and said, I'm sorry I didn't recognize either one of you. And he goes, no, I thought that's why you were being so nice to us. And I go, no, that's the way I am, sir. And so we talked, and he's like, tell me about your career aspirations. And I went, what do you want to do? And I said, my goal is to become a highway patrol sergeant and ultimately become a highway patrol captain. And he's like, what about the Rangers? And I go, sir, the Rangers don't really appeal to me, which is, I found out not the correct thing to say to a retired Ranger captain. But you started as a highway patrolman, and it's beaten into you that this is the only service. It's like the other services. Once you get into those, that's the only service. So I told him I meant no disrespect, but that's what I wanted to do. And he said, well, don't ever basically close your options, leave your options open. Anyway, they were able to get their car repaired, and we shook hands, and that's kind of a long story, but we were there for like 3 hours, so we were back and forth on lots of different things. And when he was getting ready to go, he goes, here's my address. If you're ever in Dallas, Mesquite, Garland, give me a call, and we'll have lunch or dinner or whatever. And on me, I never did that, but now I wish that I had, because, he spent a lot of time with me where he didn't have to. He could have sat there and not said anything. But in my opinion, we became friends. And so did I with the retired chief from Dallas, and both of them wrote letters to the captain thanking me for what I did. So they didn't have to do that. The biggest thing that I enjoyed was being there when the Rangers needed something. I felt like, and I think all lieutenants feel like, if you're called for whatever that Ranger's calling for, he or she is needing that for some reason, and they don't need you to go, why do you need it, this, that, and the other. And so I always prided myself, if a Ranger called me, I tried to get whatever they needed to make their job easier. And then as the captain, that responsibility increases tenfold, because you got the lieutenant, you got all these Rangers, you got Austin calling, you got, like you said, sometimes people from the Capitol calling, you got county commissioners. And so you're juggling a lot of different people with a lot of different attitudes. And so you work at trying to get everybody I guess for lack of a better term, you're trying to get everybody satisfied, stay within the law, and at the end of the day, everybody's happy about the decisions that you make. And then when you get to be an assistant chief, then of course now you're dealing more with the colonels, you're dealing with the other divisions within DPS. You got DAs gone. You got a ton of people. So again, that level of responsibility has increased tremendously. And then when you get to the next office as the chief, as you well know, that responsibility is really, really huge. And so I won't say, and I will never say that it was Earl Pearson that did it by himself. It did not happen. It was because of the people that you surround yourself with, the rangers and lieutenants, the captains, the assistant chief, and then the chief. And so I think once, and I brag on DPS, I think DPS without question is the finest trained law enforcement agency in the country. We, and I say we, I'm gone now, but I still say we.
Absolutely.
Maybe neck and neck with the FBI, but I worked with FBI agents and did an investigation, was part of an investigation of the FBI, the Ranch Division compound in Waco. So I would put a ranger up against anybody in any type of investigation. So what I would say is that badge, it gives you a ton of power. And it's up to the individual on how they utilize that power. And so I would just tell the Rangers of today, do the right thing. And if you do the right thing in your mind, you're going to do the right thing each and every day.